So welcome back, and this is the 2013 Toyota Highlander, 206,000 miles, and it's an amazing SUV. Now, these Highlanders, they do have some issues just like every other car, but if you get one that's been well maintained, then you should not have anything to worry about it. So we're gonna go ahead, do an oil change, do a walk around the vehicle, and go over some of the things that you need to keep in mind if you're gonna pick yourself up one or if you have one. These engines are fantastic, a ton of power, very comfortable ride, and if you treat it good, it'll definitely treat you good. I forget what it is, but I think it's a 14. Yep. Now this oil has 5,000 miles on it and it still looks great. This engine still looks brand new. So this one has the 3.5 V6 engine, has a bunch of power, definitely gets down the road, keeps up on the highway with no issue, definitely can't second guess it, and it has a 5-speed automatic transmission. Now I'll post the power numbers up on the screen. I forget what it is offhand. And as far as gas mileage on the highway, I think on our trip last summer that we took, it was about 26 miles per gallon, which is not bad for an SUV this size and with all this power. It is front wheel drive. There is the all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive variation, and those are hard to find, and if you find them, they go for a pretty penny. I would love to have that version of it, but I ain't got that type of money, and this gets the job done. And besides, it's the wife's vehicle and she's not into that, so it works for her. I'm gonna go ahead and start first with the tires. If you're gonna put tires on this vehicle, spend the money and get some good tires. These are the Uniroyal Laredos. They're fantastic, they're great. Personally, I'd rather have a set of Michelins on them, but don't buy cheap tires on this. We had cheap tires when we got this vehicle, and we really didn't notice the difference because, I mean, we figured a Japanese vehicle, they ride a little rough as it is, but when we switched to these new tires, I mean, this thing rides like a dream. So don't cheap out on your tires. Also, brakes. If you're trying to save money, you can go ahead with O'Reilly's, Advance, and AutoZone, all that type of stuff. But if you really want to get some premium brakes, go with the original ones from the dealer. They're probably only 5 to 10% more expensive. So for the fronts, for the premium brakes, aftermarket, it would have been $300. I spent $320 at the dealer, but the dealer also includes the hardware and all that type of stuff. You have to pay extra for that, for some special hardware aftermarket. And the same thing with the backs. I think the backs were like $280 and I paid like $300 at the dealer. So if you want to go with brakes that feel really good, go with the originals. I put these things on and this thing stops like a dime. They're quiet and they feel real smooth. So just my 2 cents on that. Now diving into the interior, considering this car has 206,000 miles and we've driven it a lot, it's really well maintained. Well, at least when the wife cleans it, but that's another story. Love her to death. This one is fully loaded, heated leather seats, sunroof, all that type of good stuff. Doesn't have the navigation, which is really no big deal. We could get an aftermarket radio if I wanted to, but we've been happy with that. We just pop our phones right up there and that gets the job done. Now, the seats on these, they are comfortable, but this gets to wear out, and that's normal in any vehicle, but not terrible. I found on this vehicle that the way the seat position is, it was a little flat, and I just wanted that little curve just to kind of relax the pressure on the legs and the back. I went ahead and I installed these spacers, and they're from the company. I think it's Desert Does It. They're about $100. It raises the front of the seat a lot more, so on longer trips it feels a lot more comfortable. I have a dedicated video on installing that. I'll post links to that. But if you have one of these SUVs, pop that in there. That makes a huge difference. I've done it in other vehicles I have, and for $100, I mean, if you're going to be traveling with your vehicle, definitely worth it. Now the back, climate controls for the little one, full captain's chairs, nice little center console, very comfortable back here. I mean, very nice, very comfortable back here. You got vents and you can control the temperature, the climate the way you want. The back seats, they're there. I don't really recommend sitting back there for long periods of time. I think maybe like an hour or two, or just pop the little humans back there and that will work for them. But the back seats, They're good, you know, if you're trying to get everybody going in a pinch, last minute, just trying to all go to the restaurant, not take multiple vehicles. I mean, that's kind of what they're for. They're not the most comfortable, the leg room there, and they're a little harsh, but if you fold them down, this is really where you get a lot of your storage. So real nice interior, very comfortable for 4 people. If you do need to add more people in the back is more just for kids, I would say. Not ideal for adults for long trips, not enough leg room. Now this is a Southern vehicle and it's never seen rust. Well, maybe the 1 time or 2 times that we drove up to New York, but as you can see, nice and clean. The exhaust just looks great, not a speck of rust on it. This thing has many miles and a lot of life left in it. And that's my advice. If you're going to buy any type of used vehicle, get a Southern vehicle. The end. Now, as far as the engine, I'm going to dive into a few things to kind of keep in mind if you're going to get one of these vehicles. First off, these vacuum lines. They wear out, they get old. But the good thing is, it's like Toyota knew this was going to happen. And, you know, these things start popping out. If you see that there's a little crack or split right over here, or it's just really loose, snip it, pop it in, you're good to go. I did that to all these lines, done, easy. Now, spark plugs on these things, they're not the easiest, but they're not the worst. In fact, I'd rather do this than do a Hemi. Intake comes out, got a dedicated video on it, and it's really easy. There's a way to take it out, which is pretty easy, which involves just taking 1 bolt out, taking this and just kind of sliding it over, and you could get to the 3 spark plugs in the back, 3 spark plugs in the front. Very simple and not bad. Use the original ones. They last about 100,000 miles and you should never have an issue. Now, diving into over here as far as the cooling system, Toyota actually did an update to their belt tensioner and their water pump. Apparently, I can't explain all that type of stuff, I'm being honest with you, but there's an update to it. So if you're going to change the water pump, go with the OEM one, or you can get the ASN one, which is OEM by Toyota from Rock Auto. It has the updated design. Apparently it's something with the bearing on it. With that water pump, it's not an issue of if it's going to fail, it's just a matter of when it's going to fail. So OEM, I have a video talking about that. And another thing too, go ahead, change all your pulleys, tensioners. It's tight to work in this area. You need to take out the back motor mount and then just kind of lift things up a little bit just to get into there. But while you're in there, water pump, pulleys, tensioner, change all that out, flush your coolant. And as far as these hoses, if your coolant system is maintained, don't change them. Just leave them alone. Use the original ones. These are original with 200,000 miles and they feel brand new. And if you do have to change them, go original. Use these clamps, because if you use the worm clamps, they get loose, you start leaking. It's a headache. Now, something that is an Achilles heel with these engines is the cam gear. The cam gear has a little sprocket for variable valve timing. They wear out. You get a little rattle on cold start, and eventually it does get worse, and you do have to change out the cam gear, and that is a big job. Pretty much engine out. Another thing that you run into is that the timing cover on the side, it does tend to leak, and the same thing, engine out. Fortunately on mine, it is not leaking or seeping with 206,000 miles. This engine's been well maintained with 5,000 mile oil. It's fully synthetic, so I don't have to worry about that. As far as the cam rattle, it's very slight. I mean, it's like 1 or 2 seconds, but if it's one of those things that you're hearing it a lot, kind of keep that in mind. And that's where the real big expense of this SUV gets in, is that's a very expensive, involved labor job. And realistically, the only way to do this job and do it right is to take the engine out. But the way you take the engine out on this is that you got to drop it from the bottom. So keep that in mind. If you're looking for one, or if yours is doing that, might be something you have to do. But I've also read and heard that there are people that have driven for hundreds of thousand miles with that noise and have never had an issue. But if that cam gear does come apart, your engine is totaled. So outside of the cam gear issue and everything else, it's still a great SUV. 206,000 miles will easily get 300,000 to 400,000 out of it, if not more. Maintenance, original part, is your friend if you want to keep this thing going for a while. So time for the filter. These are 12s. Nope, 10s. Whoops. Ah, that was great. Oh well, at least it happened on camera. For this, make sure you have the right tool. It's that cartridge filter, and if you try to do it any other which way without this tool, and I'll post a link to it, then you can break it. Yeah. Ah, that was great. So there's an O-ring in here, and you should change it. I changed it on my last oil change, but I guess I over tightened it and I can't get this thing out. So it's not leaking. I'm gonna leave it alone, and I'm probably just gonna have to end up ordering one of these. I think it's about $60 to $100, just depending if you find it new or just get it used on eBay. But make sure you change that O-ring. Filter, OEM, Toyota. There's your part number. Apparently you're supposed to be able to put this in and it drains the oil so it doesn't make a mess. I've never done it that way, and I probably need to try it. And that's that O-ring I was telling you about. So I did change it 5,000 miles ago, but you know, things happen. It's not leaking. And before we end up creating more issues, we're just gonna leave it alone for now. But I am gonna just end up getting a new one of these. Filter slides in. OEM or Wix, can't stress that enough. And then, like I talked about, this tool goes in just like so, and that's what loosens this. let's pop some oil in it. For our oil, Valvoline, extended protection, high mileage, full synthetic, 0W20. That's what Toyota calls for. That's what I use. Some people say you shouldn't use it, you should use 5W20. I've been using this thing for 50,000 miles. Car runs great. Do what you do, but I'm just gonna go with what the dealer recommends. So it takes 6.4 quarts. So let's get this filled. And now we can't forget to do this, our maintenance required light. Let's make sure we're on trip A, which we are. Okay. Turn that off. Hold the button over here. And you should see resetting maintenance data complete. We're good to go. Car fires right up. Let's see, release our emergency brake. Our engine sounds amazing. No leaks. So we're good to go. So that's gonna wrap it up for today. I'll have a video on doing the fuel pump on this one because I'm having an extended crank and diagnosed that as the fuel pump. So it'll be a separate video if you're curious on changing the fuel pump on this one, or just some tips and suggestions for fuel pump issues. Oil looks good, engine fires up real nice, and overall still a great vehicle. Correction on the mileage, it's actually 207,500 miles. So she's getting up there, but I believe 300 should be well within reach. We should have no further issues. The oil reset, I follow that because that does it every 5,000 miles. Just give you that reminder to change the oil. So don't have to use no stickers unlike some of my other vehicles. So that's kind of nice. And that's how I do my oil, every 5,000, full synthetic on this. And in case I forgot to mention a few other things to kind of keep in mind too, besides, you know, the spark plugs and all that stuff. PCV valve, obviously, which I've changed. Air filter, which I just checked it, it's just popping off those clips. That's pretty good. And before we go on that big trip, I will replace that housing for the oil filter, put a new air filter in there, and everything should be good to go. The water pump and all that type of stuff and those belts, I changed that, probably about 30,000 miles on it, so it's got plenty of life left on it. And honestly, it'll probably hold up to about 300. Not sure how long I'm gonna keep this thing, but it's great. We've had it for several years. It's paid off. We own it, so that's always a good thing. And let's see, anything else? Transmission, If you have the history that the transmission fluid has been changed, go ahead and keep on top of that. This was changed every 60,000 miles. It was changed at 60, 120, and then when I got it at 160, I did change it again. So probably when we come back from our big trip, it'll be due for another transmission filter change, which I have a separate video on how to do that on this vehicle. But if it's never been changed, leave it alone on these Toyotas. Apparently with Toyotas, and I only find this with Toyotas, if the fluid's never been changed, leave it alone. Apparently all the dirty stuff in there is actually what holds it together. I had that Camry that I have a video on, and I found out like a couple of 100 miles after changing the filter and fluid, I thought it had been maintained, but in fact it wasn't. I started getting some lazy, sloppy shifts, but it is what it is on that. If you have the history, change it. If not, leave it alone. So hope you enjoyed this video. Got a few more things I got to do to it, and now I need to jump onto this. This needs an oil change. So thanks for watching, and let's finish everything else.